Hi, it's Jessica Kirson. You're watching Comedy Matters TV with Jeffrey Gurian, and I love him.
Hey, it's Jeffrey Gurian here at the Olive Tree Cafe with one of my faves and someone who has something really important that is launching actually as of yesterday. Jessica Kirson, how are you, Jessica?
I'm good, Jeffrey. How are you?
I'm amazing. I feel really good. And I'm very excited to be interviewing you for this new project of yours, Relatively Sane.
Yes, that's my new podcast because I am relatively sane.
Who isn't?
Well, right. That's the whole point. I interview comics, actors, actresses, all kinds of people, and I basically try to find out what happened to them and where they come from and their relationships and their issues, and also talk about all different things, comedy and stuff. But it's an interesting look at comics' lives instead of just trying to be funny. It's not about. It's funny because it's comics and actor, whatever, but it's not meant for that reason.
Right. The comedy, I'm sure, comes out of the situations because people's lives are bizarre. Everyone's life, you don't wind up in comedy if something didn't go wrong somewhere.
That's right. When I'm on stage, I'm like, do you think I'd be standing here if everything were okay? Like, I come from money. I didn't have to do this, but I chose this horrible career.
And you, of all people, you opened yourself up. You've been doing that. I mean, look, I've watched you for years, and I've always been a big fan of yours. And you're nothing but honest on stage. You talk about every single facet of your life, which is amazing to me. It takes a lot of courage to do that. Were you that way when you started as well?
No, I wasn't that honest. I mean, by the way, I only laugh at honest comics too. Like I feel like the more real a comic is, the harder I laugh. And I think it's very important to be real and honest. I was not that. I, over the years, got more and more honest because I got more and more comfortable. And I realized it's therapy for me also. So when I talk about stuff, I always feel better.
Absolutely. I'm working up the courage to do that. It's not an easy thing to do.
It's not. Of course, it's much easier to talk about just random things, which I also do. But it's much harder to talk about your real stuff.
Now, I understand that one of your parents was a therapist. Who was that?
My mom is still a therapist. She's been doing it for 50 years. She's really focuses on couples, but she also sees people, not in a couple, whatever. She wrote a book called We're No Fun Anymore, which is about play, like in relationships. And I grew up with her seeing clients in our house my whole life. So it's a very funny situation because we always had strangers in the house. And I was always kind of taking care. I was like her secretary. So,
Go ahead.
yeah. And I was thrown into therapy at a very young age. Like I did EST at 10 years old. You'll love that because you probably know what EST is.
Yes, I do. I've experienced something I did LifeSpring, which is very similar to EST.
Yes.
Right. But did you do analysis with your mom? Or did she send you to somebody else?
Well, she always sent me to other therapists, but she always did therapy with me also. So, I mean, everything is, if I was upset, she'd tell me to draw a picture. If I was angry, she'd tell me to bat with, a bat with a pillow. Like she always did therapy on me. So nothing with me is ever easy. It's always very complex and I overanalyze everything and it's helped me in a lot of ways and it's made it really hard also.
It's a blessing and a curse at the same time. Having that knowledge from the time you're a child. Most children just do things, nobody analyzes them. But to grow up in a household like that, it's a very unusual opportunity in a sense.
Yes.
How did it feel as a child?
It was very, very upsetting and frustrating when I was a kid because I didn't want to do these things and I was like, forced into it a lot. So I would be very angry. But, when I got older, I realized that it's helpful. But when you're a kid, the last thing you want to do is go see a therapist.
Is analyze your actions,
right.
Of course.
Yeah.
And your mom couldn't help it because that's her training.
Right.
So it would make sense to her to try and explain things to you as you're doing them.
And fix me. She always tries, to this day, she tries to fix, she doesn't want me to be upset or be angry or anything. But sometimes you have to just allow the feelings, as you know, and not just fix it right away.
When did you come up with the concept and know that you wanted to do Relatively Sane?
Well, I love interviewing people. I get very deep, and I realize that a lot of comics and actors and performers do. Like, they don't see that side of us where we talk about real stuff.
Yeah.
And like when we're sitting around, we have very deep conversations a lot of the time. It's not always like laughing and being silly. And I really, I went to school to be a therapist. I went to NYU for a master's in social work, and then I became a comic. So I never finished, but I studied to be a therapist. I'm married to a therapist. My mother's a therapist. So it's like,
You're surrounded by therapy.
yeah, my wife is an addictions therapist for teens, so that's heavy. So I'm around it constantly, and I'm in therapy every week, and I just joined a group. Like, I'm always doing stuff. So I love talking to people, and I came up with that term because it just was a play off words, because relatively, I like it a lot, and people love the name. It's really, it just came out, and it's already like topping it's crazy.
Well, you have great guests too. Your first guest was Gary Goldman, who to me was one of the best writers. That thing that he did about the abbreviation of the states, I tell him every time I see him, and
This is the thing with my podcast. I realized I've interviewed a lot of people so far, like Sal from Impractical Jokers, Gaffigan, Lisa Lampanelli, a lot of people. And it's always more interesting when people get real and can talk about it. And I don't blame people, but some people can't go there. Some comics can't. I've had a couple people I've interviewed where it's really funny, but it doesn't get deep. They don't want to talk about any. And I have to screen that a little, because I really want. I'm not saying people have to say their deepest, darkest secrets, but I want it to be, I want it to be real.
a lot of comics are shut down. A lot of comics are people who were very awkward in high school. They didn't have much of a personality. The personality comes out on stage.
Yeah, I didn't come from that. I had a pretty good personality and a lot of friends, but I always, like we were just saying, felt very shut down and alone. Like, I had everything, but I inside felt so, like, alone.
And that's key. It's interesting that you mentioned Lisa Lampanelli, because she's been through such transformations. When she did her AOL Bill Talk, she had me moderate that for her, talking about all the changes in her life, her new spiritual life.
Yeah.
And I don't know if you know this either. For the last 20 years, I've been on the board of the Association for Spirituality and Psychotherapy.
No, I had no idea.
We teach therapists to include spirituality.
That's so smart.
Working with especially with depressed people.
Yeah.
Because people need something to hold on to. In times of despair, they need to have another way of thinking.
I think that's really great. Yeah,
It's a very important part of my life. That's why another reason I was so excited that you're doing this, because it's one thing to just do entertainment, but it's another thing to do entertainment where you're helping people.
I know, and you know what's funny, Jeff? I don't connect to doing stand-up and what I do for people with laughter. I know that sounds really weird, but I don't leave going, I just helped a lot of people. Like, when people send me messages, your video made me laugh, I haven't laughed, and so I don't connect to it a lot. But when I talk about my life and things I've struggled with, like, I have a daughter who has heart disease, my 3.5-year-old, and she's had 3 open heart surgeries and a stent already, and she needs more. And I've talked about that in podcasts and on stage, and like, I can't even tell you the reaction I get. Like, people are like, thank you so much for talking about that.
Just to say something.
Yeah. I mean, I feel like that's more, it fills me up more than just making people laugh all the time.
Lisa recently announced that she's giving up stand-up because she just wants to do life coaching. And I relate to that story more. I just found out that I might need heart surgery. And so I'm in the process of going through consultations. And I relate. And when people are willing, that's the kind of thing I would keep to myself.
Yeah.
But I find that when you share it with people, you get support and you get information.
Yes.
And it's very helpful so that you don't feel so alone. Other people are experiencing similar things to what you're going through.
Yeah, I mean, you think you're the only one, and I'm like, how many people are dealing with someone who's sick, or they're sick themselves, or they have a child that's sick? I mean, it's incredible. I don't realize what people are going through. Like a lot of times for years, I would go on stage and take everything personally. That guy doesn't like me. And then I realized everyone has stuff. Like everyone has stuff. And I have no idea what they're going through. They could have gone to a funeral that day. I have no idea. And I'm taking everything personally.
And that's what's so crazy about comedy, that you can do the same material every night. And one night it's killing, and the next night it's not working as well. It's because you don't know what the audience went through that day, or what happened before you got on stage, or anything. We're not mind readers. We think we're mind readers. You know, I used to think I could tell what you're thinking about me by looking at you, but that's not valid. It's not a valid thought.
Not at all. And it's actually usually the opposite. We come up with a whole story in our head, and it's the complete opposite of what I was even thinking.
Right. We create a movie and we believe it.
Yes.
Because we created it. And it's usually negative against ourselves.
And we're the critic, it's crazy.
And it's about learning how to change the way you think. It's so powerful. Learning, every thought you create, you can uncreate.
Yes.
I had to do that. I was a very severe stutterer. And the way I cured myself was learning that I could change a thought. And so, but I had to work on myself for years. There was no one to help me. And I created a cure for stuttering. And now I work with stutterers and teach them how not to stutter. But you can use that in anything. Overcoming obstacles is a very important thing in life. Because everybody gets stuff that they would change if they could. Everybody has something in their life that they would change if it was possible for them to do it. And then there's acceptance, right? Sometimes you have to accept things for what they are, but other things you can change. That's the serenity prayer.
That's very true. Like my daughter's health issue, I can't change it. I have to accept it, and I have to deal with it. And, but there are things about myself that I can change. I can work on my anxiety around her heart issue. There's things
I'm sure you make sure she gets the best care also, and you take the right actions.
Yes.
And that's very important, to think clearly, and when you're faced with an obstacle, to figure out how to go around it and not let it stop you.
No, you have to. You have you have a choice. I guess it's different when it's a child because you protect the child. But yeah, you could have a health thing and not deal with it and let it get worse and worse and worse, or take the suggestions and go get help.
And I bet she's a happy little girl, too.
She's the happiest kid in the world. You would never know.
You never know.
You know by the scars, but that's really it. But that's been, I'd say, the hardest thing I've ever had to deal with, because I have to watching a child go through pain and different things, and you can't take it away. It's very, very difficult.
It's so frustrating, I'm sure. Just horrible.
It changed my life in the way that, I remember, I was pissed off I couldn't find a parking spot the day she was 6 days old, first open heart surgery. And then I went through that, and I'm like, I'm complaining about a parking spot? Like, things could be I was around, not to be depressing, but it's real, it's life. I was around people who lost their kids when I was there many times. It just puts things into perspective. Yes.
Exactly.
I'm sure for you too, with the heart thing. It just does.
Absolutely. I'm calm. I'm taking the next right action. I set up consultations in great hospitals, and whatever has to be done will be done. It's lucky that I found it early. If it has to be done, it has to be done. And, and I'm in the moment with it. I'm present for it. And, so have you spoken about that on the podcast?
I have. I've spoken about it on a lot of podcasts. I'm very open and honest about it. And comics are so supportive. They've all tried to do benefit shows for, but it's hard. I always worry about people getting upset when I talk about it. So I'm worrying about them, because to me, I've learned how to deal with it. But it's incredibly upsetting, of course.
Well, you're a sensitive being, and that's one of the things that makes you so special. To be a sensitive being is a very rare thing in this world. Most people don't want to cop to their sensitivity, and it's a great strength. It's not a weakness. It feels like a weakness very often throughout life, because people take kindness for weakness very often, and they try to take advantage of it, and they try to manipulate because of it. But in the end, it happens to be a great strength.
I think you live life more and you feel more, even though it's hard sometimes. It is hard. I went to a new therapist today, in addition to my therapist, to join a group to learn a technique called DBT, which is I think will be very helpful for me because I'm learning techniques to deal with my stress and anxiety in the moment.
Is it like tapping?
Yeah, I've done tapping.
The tapping
My
thing?
mom's
Yeah,
a tap.
yeah,
My
yeah,
mom
yeah,
taps me.
yeah.
I've done tap. You can do tapping on YouTube. I want to tell your guests, like you can.
An
It's great.
EMDR, the
It's
knife thing?
amazing.
Yeah.
It sounds crazy. When I did my hour special, I filmed it in January. I was freaking out from anxiety. I was freaking out that I wouldn't remember stuff. My mom was saying, please, my sister, go on YouTube. And I had done tapping, but I looked at this guy. They're 10-minute videos. You follow the video. I have to tell you, I was completely calm and I remembered every single thing. I don't remember anything. Like, it was unbelievable. I know it sounds weird, but
No, it
really
doesn't sound
works.
weird to me. I get it. I've seen it.
Yeah,
Yes,
yeah.
I've seen it and I've used it
Yeah.
to take away anxiety. It's fantastic. Finish on this. Where do you do your podcast from?
So I recorded at Governor's Comedy Club. They have on Long Island because that's where I live. So it's very convenient. They have a radio station called Gov's Comedy, and it's great. I sometimes I bring my equipment and meet with people in person. I met with Chris DiStefano, Judy Gold. They haven't, they'll all be coming out. They're so funny. Those two are hilarious. The episodes. And I have equipment, so I do it different places. Sometimes I travel, sometimes people call in. I wanted to make it convenient. I'm not doing this whole thing to make it so hard.
Yes.
So I have people calling in from LA. So instead of having to go there or wait for them to come to New York, they can call in. Carney Wilson's calling in, and Bill Burr's going to do it, and Pete Holmes, and they're all in LA. So.
That's so awesome.
Yeah.
So, in wrapping up, is there anything else that you'd like to say about it that you want people to know?
Well, I really would love people to listen to it because I think it's going to be very helpful, and it'll help you understand comics more for sure. That we're not always, people like, you must be a blast all the time and happy and laughing. I'm like, oh my God, I can literally barely get out of bed. Like, it's very bad. The depression, of course. Yeah. And the guests I've been really particular with. So I have like a message board on Facebook. I want people to get very involved and help each other. I want to build a community where people can help each other.
That's so wonderful.
Yeah,
well, I'm so glad that we had a chance to do this. I love you. I'm a big supporter.
Thank you.
Of yours. And so everybody, make sure that you check out Relatively Sane, and they can find it on iTunes, I guess, and every place, Stitcher, every place you find the podcast.
Yeah.
Amazing. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Hey guys, thanks for watching Comedy Matters TV. To check out some of our other videos, click on the boxes on either side of me. And don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe. Not just for me, but for my parents.